Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Our government has always wanted to maintain the illusion of freedom above all else, but now the illusion of impending danger is more important to them. Can they make you hold these cognitively dissonant concepts in your mind at the same time? A kind of Orwellian doublethink, to think that you are free and enjoying your life here in the United States, and yet at the same time run to them cowering in fear for the latest protection with the police state, with the military on the streets of our cities. That's what we're going to see this July 4th. An article that came out from Reason is, don't be terrorized by your government this 4th of July. The run-up to this weekend has been filled with one fear story after the other from both the government and the media cooperating with it at the same time. They point out that the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, are warning us that there's going to be a heightened threat of Islamist terrorist attacks. Now, this week, of course, it's the terrorists that are going to be attacking us. The rest of the time, we have to be concerned about those people who want limited government, you know, the Tea Party, those patriots out there. They say CNN is reporting law enforcement officials believe that the Islamist threat is the, quote, highest in year. And of course, CIA Deputy Director turned CBS security analyst Michael Morrell declared, I wouldn't be surprised if we were sitting here a week from today talking about an attack over the weekend in the United States. That's just how serious this is. Is it really that serious? As Reason pointed out, there's only been 68 Americans that have died since September 11th in terrorist attacks, and that includes 13 in the Fort Hood shooting by itself. And of course, that was a military base where they had disarmed the soldiers because they cannot be trusted to carry their sidearms well along with them, just as Americans cannot be trusted to keep our weapons with us, according to those who want gun control. They point out Americans are 69 times more likely to die taking a bath rather than from terrorism. Nevertheless, we have these representatives going on all the different mainstream media. Look at this story here. This is from Steve Watson. Terror panic. Representative says New York officials expecting a dirty bomb attack on July the 4th. And of course, this is Megyn Kelly on Fox News working with Representative Peter King, one of the biggest neocon fearmongers and pushers of the security state and the police state you can find anywhere. So he goes on Fox News with Megyn Kelly, and he says, you wouldn't see the nuclear explosion devices being used the way they are if this was just a routine warning. And then Megyn Kelly picks up on that, says, did you say nuclear? And he says, yes, that's a big problem here in New York. Nuclear explosives, the dirty bomb. Okay, so besides sounding like some kind of Cold War hysteria, this reminds me very much of the staged back and forth between then Representative Markey, he's now a senator from Massachusetts, and Lisa Jackson with the EPA, where they had prearranged this thing to sell the public that fine particulate matter, you know, your barbecue smoke or maybe your fireworks, that was equivalent to cancer in this country. She said to Representative Markey in these hearings, she said, there's more people dying from this than from cancer. If we could solve this, it would be more significant than finding a cure to cancer. And he actually knew that's where they were going because he mentioned cancer before she said that. And he said, wait, did I hear you say cancer? And she says, yes, I said cancer. So he said nuclear bomb, dirty bomb. And let's be honest here. They will do that at some point. We know they will do that. They've got a lot of nuclear devices. A lot of them have gone missing. That will be the next step when they're ready to roll this out. But right now, they've got everybody in such a state of panic that people are looking everywhere for attackers. And of course, this happened today. An active shooter was reported at the Washington Navy Yard yet again. Remember, that was where the shooter went in. He said that he had heard voices. He had carved on the stock of his gun, this is my ELF device, or something to that effect. In other words, he believed that he was being mind controlled. And of course, the CIA has talked about using extremely low frequencies to do just that. But never mind, that was just a terrorist attack. But this was not. This was not a terrorist attack. They say there was no chase, no report of injuries, no sightings of anyone with a gun at the Navy Yard. That was, of course, local news after national news hyped it up. And of course, we see, as we look at these pictures that are coming from CNN, it is a lockdown, a full militarized lockdown. When anything like this happens, they go totally over the top. And as CNN points out, as a preventive measure, officials closed Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House because we have to protect the president. And the paranoid government is not only selling you fear, they are genuinely paranoid. Look at what they have done here. This is RT showing the new spikes going around the White House. As some people have said, pointed out, the White House and Obama actually can build a fence when they want to. And so they're making this one pretty fortified. They said the White House is relying on a medieval solution. Yeah, they want to keep the peasants out with the pitchforks, the peasants and the serfs, those who are taxed at a rate that is about 5 to 6 times what the peasants and serfs of medieval times were taxed. They describe this as rows of pencil-tip pieces of metal facing outward at a 5-degree angle. The spikes are placed over the existing fence beginning yesterday, with contractors finishing the job today, this morning. The Secret Service and the National Park Service agreed on the temporary security enhancements back in April. A proposal for a permanent new fence is under review, and construction may begin as early as next year. Now, when we go back and look at what they were talking about back in April, the Washington Post had this headline. They say, agency votes for spikes on the White House fence, but a moat has been ruled out, because that was seriously suggested by Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat of Tennessee. That was back in November. When they got to April, just 3 months ago, they ruled that out. They said, perhaps, he said at the time, we ought to look at a barricade of water, because, people were jumping over the fence a couple of times. Before we had an empire, it was common when America was a republic for people to just walk up to our presidents, to our leaders. It was possible even up until the Civil War. We had a fellow who came over from England, and he walked all the way through the South, all the way up to Washington, meeting all the different political leaders, meeting Sam Houston in Texas, meeting the leaders of the different sides personally. And this was in the middle of a civil war. People were not that obsessed with security. But now that we have an empire, that is the way they act. We have to have a Praetorian Guard. Now, there's no threats, as antiwar.com has pointed out. There's no actual threat. Nevertheless, we see security ratcheting up, and they point out that it's not only the Department of Homeland Security, it's not only Peter King and Megyn Kelly with Fox News, but we've got the FBI, Homeland Security. Representative Mike McCall predicted several, quote, small-scare ISIS attacks. I don't know if that's a typo from antiwar.com or if that was a Freudian slip from Mike McCall. I think that's supposed to be small-scale ISIS attacks, but I think it really fits better with small-scare ISIS attacks. They say terrorists have not used July 4th as a particular date to carry out in past years over the decade-long war of terror. So why would they look for it now? But they are looking for it. Look at the way Daily Mail hyped this, the loyal Mockingbird Press. Their headlines: the sick ambitions of a caliphate bent on carnage. Chilling map predicts where ISIS will strike in the West with lone wolf attacks as FBI sets up 56 centers to monitor 4th of July terror threats. So not only do they say that, they show us a map. And of course, ISIS has been busy tweeting out this map because that makes them look big, or perhaps because ISIS and the federal government are connected so closely. They say the FBI is setting up command centers in all of its 56 field offices across the country ahead of the July 4th weekend to monitor any potential terrorist attack, law enforcement sources have revealed to them and told to Fox News and to Daily Mail. Now, this is our analysis of it. Kurt Nemo writes a story. FBI exploits the baseless 4th of July terror threat to establish command centers. It's actually a pretext to build and expand the surveillance grid, because these command centers have been around with us for quite a while in this war on terror. We used to call them fusion centers. Remember the 2009 MIAC report from the Fusion Center? That was a story that was broken by Infowars, and that was where they were looking at people who had just voted in the election of 2008 for Ron Paul or Constitutional Party candidate Chuck Baldwin or others. They were looking for people who were patriots. Those were the people they were looking for at the time, not Islamic terrorists, and they have continued to say that that is not their main focus. Islamic terrorists. Their main focus are people who would be opposed to this government politically. Kurt Nimmo points out that although the government admits it has absolutely no credible evidence that ISIS or anyone is planning to attack the United States over the 4th of July, the FBI has nevertheless moved to establish command centers around the United States. The command centers, he says, will integrate local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies so that officials can gauge the threat level and respond quickly. And he points out these command centers really are fusion centers around the country. They have been routinely used to monitor political activists, not supposed terrorists. The centers often work hand in hand with the private sector to undermine First Amendment rights of American citizens. Let's remember, going back 2 years ago, back in 2013, this article that we ran talking about the New York Times' article. See, everybody knows that the FBI is hatching most of these terrorist plots, and that even the New York Times admits that. We've had Judge Napolitano point that out. We've had Mother Jones point it out. We've had the New York Times pointing it out. And so we covered that article when they came around to mentioning it. Of course, in April 2012, the New York Times said terrorist plots hatched by the FBI. They revealed that many of the high-profile terror attacks foiled by the FBI were in fact fabricated from start to finish by the FBI itself. They say the U.S. has been narrowly saved from lethal terrorist plots in recent years, or so it seems. But all these dramas were facilitated by the FBI, whose undercover agents and informers posed as terrorists, offering a dummy missile, a fake C4 explosive, a disarmed suicide vest, and rudimentary training. Suspects naively played their parts until they were arrested. It's all smoke and mirrors, folks. That's what it's been so far. Just remember 3 months ago, where Dianne Feinstein demanded that we have internet censorship because the FBI had staged an event where they leaked a document, and she said that document should never appear on the internet. So she uses the FBI's linked document in a staged semi-pseudo attack to say that we ought to have censorship of the internet. After the FBI uncovered another one of the self-orchestrated terrorist plots, this is just 3 months ago, leading to the arrest of 2 women, Senator Feinstein demanded online censorship of the literature that the FBI had published. And let's not forget where this is all going. This is all going to support the idea of a nationalized police force. Of course, they've been using the war on terror to extend what they had started with the war on drugs, removing our due process, corrupting the police, corrupting the legal system. But now they have taken it even farther. We have seen an infrastructure of tyranny, legal and physical, enacted in this country. That's what all the massive hoarding of ammunition by the federal government is about. That's what the pre-positioning of militarized assets in small towns all over the United States is about. And of course, it's about militarizing the police. As the New American points out, Obama's unconstitutional schemes to nationalize the police, they say before openly complaining about the militarization of the police, Obama was militarizing them at an unprecedented rate. At the same time, he was attacking the rights of Americans with slogans like, quote, weapons of war don't belong on our streets. Now, in that, he was referring to what they call assault rifles, which is a vague definition we all know. Nevertheless, he was talking about individual firearms that are recognized as a fundamental human right by our Second Amendment. So he says weapons of war don't belong on the street, but he was flooding the streets with real weapons of war at the same time. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, grenade launchers, and even more, they say, to the local police. And after the unrest in Ferguson, much of which was fueled by Obama ally and financier George Soros, as shown by an in-depth investigation in the Washington Times, Obama started complaining about the very militarization that his administration had been engaged in. So they released what they called the Task Force on the 21st Century Policing to study the issue, and guess what they said? Yeah, we need to nationalize the police. Russia is looking at this as well because, you know, every government wants to maintain an iron fist, an iron hold on power. The Russians are looking at this and saying MPs, this is reported by RT today, MPs are proposing granting police exceptional rights in Russia. They say a group of Russian lawmakers have drafted a bill broadening police powers and giving them the, quote, presumption of trust. Wow, that sounds familiar. We don't actually use those terms, but that's essentially what we have here. The police can be trusted. You, however, are a terrorist until you prove otherwise. Of course, you don't need any ID if you're going to vote, but for everything else, you must show your identity papers and prove your innocence here in the United States. Of course, Russia wants to do the same thing. They're just, the Russians are just a little bit behind us in tyranny right now. They say, among other things, this would allow them to break into cars and homes without warrants and open gunfire at mass gatherings of people. Well, what's the problem? The Russians don't have a Supreme Court. They've got to make a law. You don't need no stinking law to do that. Just look at the way we did it in the United States. We got the Supreme Court that makes pronouncements. We create a war on drugs. You don't need to actually bother the MPs with any of that. They need to get with a program. They need to follow our example.
I want to make this announcement now. It's going up as we speak, a day early.
To celebrate the birth of our country and give a big thanks to all the info warriors out there, we are now offering free shipping on every item shipped out of the InfoWarsStore.com warehouse. That's free shipping on all t-shirts, books, and DVDs. Free shipping on Molon Labe and 1776 belt buckles, which are also 25% off while supplies last. Free shipping on all of our InfoWarsLife.com nutraceuticals. If it's in the InfoWarsStore.com warehouse, it's shipping for free, all during the month of July. It's our way of saying thanks to the true heart and soul of this operation, who stand beside us and support us as we wage an info war for liberty and freedom for all. InfoWarsStore.com, free shipping for the month of July. We celebrate the 4th of July as a reminder of earning our independence from a tyrannical and oppressive government. Just a reminder to the Obama administration, there's plenty of room on the calendar for another holiday.